All right, we're good to go.
Okay, it is 6:01 and I'll call the meeting to order. Let me just pull up the agenda and the minutes. All right. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 1st. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And I'll second it. Any comments, questions on the minutes? No, I think having recordings of this definitely helps. So, all right. So roll call vote, Jeff?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the minutes are approved. All right, the tough work is out of the way. So,
Okay.
all right. So, Daryl, the big thing is reviewing the HVAC in each of the buildings. Do you want me to pull up the basically your report that laid it all out? Is that
Yeah,
the
that'd be
best way?
great. Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, if I'm going to be sharing screens, let me close all my work stuff. Yeah. All right, there we go. Let me just find the page. Oh, it was in the attachments. I did the wrong thing.
I really liked that breakdown by building with all that was in the attachments packets. I thought that was really helpful. And
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we are, we're looking at, holistically in every single building is just the capacity for the HVAC units to work properly. Which, if you look at the list, it's we're in a pretty good place right now. And if you're looking at it in general terms, the main issues that we have are really around kind of how we deal with heating and how the heating affects the blowers. So we do have schools where, and I think this is pretty typical of buildings, older buildings and so forth. So you might have the vents work, so the fans work fine, and they're not on, in the windows. And then you might be in a situation where you have the heat, and in order for the heat's always running. So if the heat's always running, it's just like being in a college dorm. It's always on. So it's the same type of thing. But we want to keep the unit vents moving the air through the rooms. So we're working on the thermostats. That's a big one that we're focusing on right now. Excellent. Okay. So I'll start going through these individually. If you look at Paxton Center School, so Paxton is in the out of all the schools, Paxton is the one that needs work in reference to pneumatic lines more so than most of the other schools. So one of the things that we're now doing is we're changing out the main trunk air lines all the way through the building, and we just want to ensure that they're in a good place. There aren't any leaks. They're working correctly, and the connection between the thermostat and the heater is working properly. Then what we're going to do, go back through, and this is something that Craig has been working on, as well as a company that's been working with us. It's to calibrate all the rooms as well. And again, check to make sure that we have the airline set so that we can adjust the heat as necessary during heating seasons. So that was an important project. It was a big project. They've been doing this now for probably 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. They've been working on this. They'll be wrapping up pretty soon. And again, that was really one that could have been, didn't necessarily have to be done. And I think that's how it's kind of worked. They're like, okay, we'll just adjust it in this room and we'll do it individually. But looking at this and ensuring that, okay, we have the capacity to have the airflow going at all times, 2 hours before, 2 hours after, that type of stuff. We wanted to ensure that we had everything set. So that's why we did that there.
Okay. Do we know, will that be done? I guess, do we know what the timeline is on that?
I haven't talked to Jim since early last week, so I'm not sure. I can tell you that it's probably going to be within the next week or two. It should be wrapped up,
Okay.
because they've been working on it now for a while. So I'm guessing it should. We should be in a pretty good place, with this ultimately, pretty soon. But again, it's all kind of person dependent and how much time we have to spend on a certain room or a certain place. So it's not quite like renovating an old house where the further you dig in, the more stuff you find, because we're looking specifically at that trunk line and we're looking at the pneumatic lines going through the building. So.
Okay. All right. But we don't see an issue with even the October 5th date, never mind the later ones?
No, we're going to be good with that.
Okay. All right. So Central Tree.
So Central Tree, what's interesting about Central Tree is, again, both of these come back to, old, like Paxton, a little bit of a renovation issue that occurred probably whenever it was renovated, 96, 97. Central Tree, these are rooftop units that are on the A building, which is where the cafeteria, the gymnasium, and the office suites are. So they're on top of that section of the building. And so they can't communicate with the main system. So they're always running. So because they're always running, it puts them in a situation where, we're just concerned that, well, when something goes wrong, we're going to have to go up on top of the roof and try to figure out, okay, where it's gone wrong and how to communicate. So we're in the midst of figuring out, working with a company. I believe it's Apex, Dan. I think Apex or another company. Don't quote me. But
It's Apex.
It's Apex, okay. So Apex is a company that does a lot of work for our local communities and towns and so forth around our heating systems. So, again, what we're going to do is we'll end up, excuse me, as I wrote, there are the parts for some of our machinery, they're no longer available. So what we're in the process of doing is going back through, we're going to put the mechanicals and connect those to the communication system so that we can actually communicate at least from one section to the other, so that it makes it a little easier to do so. The other thing in Central Tree, it's similar to, similar to Paxton in the sense that they have pneumatic lines but they also have computer controlled lines. So it's a computer controlled pneumatic line. It's a little different than the other buildings in that sense. I think it's the only building with that current kind of process, and they don't even do that anymore in terms of how they have computer controlled pneumatic lines. I think they tried it and that wasn't a great idea. But there are some, we found that there are some lines that are within the walls that have either cracked or have small little fissures or whatever in them. So air does leak, and as soon as air leaks out of something, you do not have the capacity to control the heat. So if the heat's on, people are like opening their windows because they're running the heat and the univents are running. So we're going back through and we're tracking those down as well. Those are going to be, again, the fans will still run. We'll still get the univent stuff going. The air will still be going through. In terms of the heating, that'll be another thing that we have to work toward in terms of just kind of being able to say, okay, let's bring the heat down. If it's December and we have the heat cranking, we want to be able to control it. So that's the other thing that we're looking at doing. Naquag is they're all electrical. Their system was a Johnson control system that was done back in 97 when the renovation occurred. We just literally replaced their management system this past year. So they now have control of all of their systems. And as I wrote, there aren't a lot of mechanical issues, no airline leaks. We have a computer communication remedy that we put in place, and it's purely looking at a couple of rooftop unit exhaust fan motors that have aged out, and that's just a matter of replacing those out. And that's a, again, one of the issues, and this happens with all old buildings, it's just getting the parts. So we do our best to stock up on parts. So if we know we're going to buy a motor for something, Jim tries to buy two, so we at least have one there that we know we're going to have to replace in another part of the building. So we feel Naquag, we're in a really good place with Naquag. Glenwood, they're in fantastic shape right now. No major issues whatsoever. Their systems work great. I think Jeff did talk about the screens. That is an issue we're going to have to figure out. But mechanically, they get the airflow they need. And there's a water pump, just needs service, that's all. At TP, and that's a pneumatic system, but it's based on a time clock. The thing that they've going for them there is that they don't have the air leaks that Paxton has, so they can control their heat. The issue there is just they've got exhaust fan motors on the roof that we're looking to take care of and replace, and those are ones that we have our crew going around and just pulling the old motors out, putting the new ones in. At Houghton Chocolate, same thing. It's a time clock controlled pneumatic system. No major air leaks, mechanical issues. We do have, an AC unit in the, the auditorium, I believe, that it works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes. We've tried many different ways to fix it. So that's probably going to be a large, that's going to be one where we have to have a crane come take the unit up off the roof and we replace it. That's how big those are. The same thing happens to us whenever we have a rooftop unit up at the high school. We have to bring in a big crane to change things out. Mount View. Oh, go ahead.
For that one, is that a showstopper getting that replaced, or?
No, no, because we still have the capacity for airflow. It's just air conditioning.
Okay, so it's just the temperature portion of it.
Yep. And that space is, it's not used as often as I think they probably thought it would be when it was built. So I think that's one of the reasons why they never, Craig, my HVAC guy, he's always running around like crazy. So it's probably one of those ones that he knows it's on the back burner. And it's a big, big job in order to get that fixed eventually. Mount View, that's the electrical management system, all computer controlled, all remote. You can pull it up on your phone. You can see the different temps. You can pull up what the airflow is out of one room, what the temp is out of the room. They have the most sophisticated system out of any of the schools. One of the issues is that we've had some of the RTU units have failed earlier than we would have anticipated. Of course, they all fail after their warranty. So that's how they're made. And it's just some of the ways in which you have to replace some of these items within these giant rooftop units on top of Mount View. They're put together beforehand. So in order to go out and get into it to replace things, we actually have to take things apart. So it's almost like changing, something really complicated in a car that you can't get to, and you have to pull everything out in order to get to this one little part that's not working. That's what we have to do at Mount View most of the time when we have anything go wrong with a rooftop unit. The other part that we have a challenge with always is finding people that can do the work, because it is super complicated. So, again, the good thing is the units are working. We have one that we do need to take care of it's a wheel basically. And then there are two copper lines for two RTU units on the roof that we're just waiting for those parts.
Okay.
At Mayo, no major issues right now. I spoke with Peter Luke's town manager a couple weeks ago, and Holden had voted to put quite a bit of money into the elementary schools this past year. So one of the things that's going to happen probably sometime in January, February, I talked to the head of the DPW last week about this. We're probably going to be able to, we're on the list to have the, the control system taken care of. So that's really a big deal, because right now they have no way, if they lose power and something happens to a system someplace, they have to go figure it out manually. They can't do it remotely. They can't do it, like at Naquag, you can just pull up a computer and it will tell you exactly what you need to do, where you need to go, what's wrong. This is kind of like a needle in a haystack scenario. So the head custodian there, Billy's really good at doing it, but we'd like to make it a little easier for him.
Okay. So if we're looking at doing that in January, February, I guess my only concern is making sure that any downtime from it doesn't affect the opening of the school.
Oh,
Like,
it
if it
won't.
can't run or something. Okay.
Yep. So what's going to happen is, unless, again, the unit events work, everything's fine. The airflow's there.
Okay.
The issue would be if power went out, if a unit didn't come back on, what we're doing is we're trying to be preventative. We're trying to look at this holistically. So if there's a way for us to ensure that this doesn't happen, if these different things occur, that's how it's going to play out.
Okay.
So again, and just a couple of small issues with exhaust fans, and that's very, very typical in our buildings. That's something we do every single year. Dawson, same thing. Just no issues really in the classrooms. A heating element in the vestibule when you first walk in. A couple of rooftop exhaust motors. Same thing. It's typical what we do on a annual basis. And some of these systems are working. They're just not working fantastic. So we want to ensure that they work as good or better than what we would want them, how we would want them to work. So Davis Hill, 2 classroom univent motors are being replaced. So we know we have 2 that we're just replacing, taking care of. We have an RTU unit motor we're rebuilding. And then again, another vestibule heater. I don't know, those don't last very long. We go through those. It's because they're running all the time. They keep that vestibule warm, and there's not a lot of insulation, when you're in that space. So they do burn out pretty quickly. So that's another one we're fixing. But again, that's not an air circulation issue. It's not really a classroom heating issue. At the high school, they have done an unbelievable job over the past 8 weeks taking care of things in that building. It's remarkable. They are really in a great position in terms of their classroom and rooftop units working. There are a couple spaces that are interior spaces and they don't have windows, but they do have units. They have air circulation and so forth. So all we're going to do is we just want to ensure that the air circulation is adequate, and we don't get CO2 buildup if people are in there and so forth. And then finally, ECC. That was another big one that we're working on, and that's literally calibrating. That's what they're doing this week. They're taking out, or this week into next, taking out the thermostats in all the classrooms and replacing them so that they can control their heat. So they're not going over to a unit itself and turning it off and turning it on. So that comes down to the calibration, the thermostats aging out, and then some of the heating valves on some units have to get replaced with some of the airlines while they calibrate. So as they do the process, they'll go through and do those items at the same time. So got a crew of people who are working on all these things right now, but it's in a really good spot. I'm very happy with where we are. I think what would happen, there are a lot of places that probably are in similar places throughout the state, and because heating season hasn't really kicked in yet, although it's supposed to be like 37 degrees in Rutland this weekend on Saturday and Sunday at night. So I'm a little concerned about that, But I think, for the most part, when we're thinking about heating the buildings and turning them on, usually we don't turn them on and, well into the middle to late October.
For the ECC, do all the units in the rooms work? And it's just a matter of the heating, or is there more to it than that? Maybe I'm just not understanding.
So the big thing there is when they're looking at the thermostats in particular, they can't control the heat. So the heat's on, and if it's on, it's on, and it's hot. So they might have to open windows. So we're going through, taking those out, putting the new ones in. That should work. They're checking the air lines to make sure all the pneumatic lines work appropriately. They're connecting, similar to Central Tree. It's just at a much smaller scale. We don't have the same air leak issues in the walls at Central that we have at Central Tree. The Central Tree one is that's a tough animal because it's literally their lines that run behind all the drywall, and they're not running up above a drop ceiling. They're in the walls.
Yeah.
So in some places, we're just going to try to run new lines because it's easier.
Yeah, just leave them and run new.
Yep.
So I guess, really the way I'm reading this, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like there's really only 3 schools that couldn't open today just for only looking at the HVAC. That's Paxton, Central Tree, and the ECC, right? And
they could open. The issue is the heat.
Right. It'll be hot if.
Well, if we were running, so here's the thing. So there's still, like, for example, I think there are 2 rooms at Davis Hill, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 classroom univent motors. Right. So those 2 univent motors in that room, they don't work. So if those didn't get fixed before kids came in, you'd have to open up the windows, maybe have a fan in a window just exhausting air out of the room, which is one of the things that they say to do. Keep that door open and exhaust it out, and you're going to move the air through the room, and you'll get the turnover that you need without having a univent. All the univents will work everywhere else. The issue is in some of the places, it's the heating. So that's why we're fixing thermostats. That's why we're fixing the pneumatic lines, so that when we have to turn the heat on, they're going to be able to adjust it correctly. Because what we don't want teachers to do is be like, oh my God, it's too hot in here. I'm going to shut off my univent. And then that defeats the purpose of the air circulation.
Okay. And I guess one thing, all filters have already been replaced in univents and all that. I seem to remember that from before.
Yep. So they do that during the summer to begin with. So that's something that happens anyway. And all those filters are MERV 8 filters or higher. So they, one of the recommendations is to have a MERV 13, and none of our systems are capable of handling MERV 13s because they're too dense a filter, and the air won't be able to go through. Motors will seize. We'll have many more problems than we would. And yet, a MERV 8 filter is really sufficient to deal with this, on top of the fact that you're going to have air circulating through the room, on top of the fact that kids and adults are wearing masks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody? Jeff, Carolyn, any questions?
Yes. Thank you. Besides the HVAC, which obviously that has consumed a tremendous amount of time, what else would you like to see in the buildings before the kids and teachers start to come in? What beyond the HVAC question, what else would you like to see happening in our buildings so that you feel as confident with the facilities as you can?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So I when we're looking at the system, big thing is to have that air movement.
Right.
I want to ensure that that's there. I want to ensure that we have our sanitizing stations. And, we already do have quite a few of those,
Okay.
ready to go. And, we're getting those set up. The signage, all the different protocols that the principals are, again, working on as we speak, as they pull all of this together. There aren't really, I mean, those are the big things, when we're talking about the building itself and ensuring that it's safe. That's really the area that was most concerning was, okay, let's ensure that this is safe in terms of the air circulation. I think I told you last time we're purchasing the CO2 meters for all the classrooms.
Right.
And it's not like we're going to go in there now and test for CO2 because the kids aren't in there. So we're going to wait until we have kids, and then we're going to do, random checks of all the classrooms, and we're going to keep a log of it, and we're going to just kind of go through, and that way we're paying attention to the kind of that level, because again, we want that to run in the 600 level, 700 level. You don't want to get into the 900,000 level in terms of the CO2. So you want it down. So we're going to measure that. We also bought airflow measures for all of the schools. So there's going to, on a daily basis, on a spot check basis, they're going to go around, custodians will go around the buildings, and they'll use the airflow meters to check the univent systems and ensure that there's proper airflow coming out of the univents. That will, at least allow us to be able to say, okay, we're providing the safest environment we can for these kids. We're offering up, the opportunity for, if there are elevated CO2 levels, okay, how are we going to, get the kids out of there? How do we rectify that situation in terms of whatever's going on? So it's going to help us deal with any immediate issues that, we might face. But, I feel as though we're in a much better place building wise. I'm pretty confident in where we're at right now, and the fact that we'll be ready for the kids when they're ready to go. And again, we're going to bring in a small group of kids in October 5th, and then we'll ramp up that time. And the big time when we have all the kids coming in, in cohorts in November, I think that's really where the rubber will hit the road.
Yes, I think so. When you talk about the signage, is part of that, and forgive the ignorance of the question, but is part of that, like, I'm guessing that you've rerouted traffic in the hallways, and part of that signage is what you're talking about, where you're directing kids to go one way this way and one way on the
Right.
other hall, or is that right?
Right. So you're talking about, ensuring that you have social distancing when kids are walking from one place to the other. We're walking on one side of the hall, it's like traffic.
Right.
So you're not merging together.
Right.
The signage around hand sanitizer, wearing masks around,
Sure.
washing your hands. So I met with the 5 boards of health, and we had some of our school nurses here today, and they were like, oh gosh, we walked into the buildings and I didn't see any signs. And we're like, no, we haven't actually put the signs up yet. That's what is coming next. So we're going to have all the signage that, it's just like if you go someplace now, you walk into the building, there are like 5 signs telling you, hey, make sure you're wearing a mask, make sure you're doing this. And we want to ensure that there are strong visuals for kids. So they can actually understand it. And I think they'll understand it, they'll get it. But I just want to have a lot of just visuals for them just to pay attention to.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Daryl, I had just a quick question.
Sure.
What was, and sorry if you've already talked about this, but what's the status of getting the third-party vendor for the HVAC assessment?
Yeah, so we have someone who is, Jim Cavello is actually working with them. I think he sent me a text over the weekend. So they're going to come in and do an assessment of the building. So it's going to be like a sample of all the buildings. And they'll look at different classrooms and, the air movement in the classrooms and so forth. So timing, it should be happening pretty soon.
Okay. And do you have like a name of the company?
It's, gosh, Dan, Chuck, Chuck, I can't even pronounce his last name. I apologize. But he has done he actually did the remedial work up in Thomas Prince when they had their asbestos issues, and they do the air testing up at Thomas Prince, and they've been doing that now for probably 8 years for us.
I'll get that name for you, Carolyn. I'll look it up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else? No. All right. No. So I think that was good. And Jeff actually hit on the next thing I wanted to do, which is everything else. But we pretty much covered that. Yeah. So I guess, is there anything else outstanding that we haven't covered yet today? I think of anything.
Well, I
but,
guess
yeah.
I guess given the name of our subcommittee, if there's a security element that we're not addressing, or that I know that for example, maybe this is on the mark or not, but given that we are trying to contain how easily this virus might come in and out of our buildings, I suppose, from a security perspective, I imagine the doors will be managed in a different way for people who are coming to get kids, or is there something that we need to look at protocol wise with that in terms of security? Basically in this sense, not so much a predator in the classic sense, but a predator that might be riding unknowingly on someone coming in.
So once schools open, i.e. it's time for the kids to come into the building. As soon as they're in the building, all the exterior doors are locked. Even the ones in the front of the building, front of the vestibule. And so all the schools have cameras, and they have the buzz-in system. So what we'll do is, again, there's going to be signage there saying, kind of what your business is, what you need to do. We're going to discourage people from coming to school.
Okay.
And I'm talking parents. I mean, unless they're coming to pick up their kid for something, we're really not looking to bring more people into the building than who we have working in the building. Just for those cross-contamination reasons.
Right.
So we're going to have the same safety protocols in place.
And I'm guessing the rules will be the same for anyone else, whether it's a parent or whether it's a guy who's coming in to work on the lights in the hallway. Everybody's going to have to be masked. Everyone's going to have to do all the same sorts of things that we're going to be asking the kids when they come in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to allow any adults in the building without masks.
Okay. All right.
And kids, it's the kindergarten and first grade.
Sure.
We're going to try to get them to do it.
All right. Yeah, Adam, that was my on the other idea.
Nope. That was a good question. Yeah. And I guess in that same vein, I know as we open up with remote initially and all that, I know Barry's been super busy already, but just try to keep a good pulse on any issues that are arising IT wise, especially security wise, privacy wise within the schools, and have some method in place for teachers to be able to report back issues they're having before it becomes big Facebook type issues. Would be good.
Yeah, and I have to say our staff is excellent at letting us know when there are issues, especially around technology. And that's how, and I didn't mean that, in a negative manner.
It's a good thing. So
yeah, it is. So they might run into an issue with something where like, hey, I have this weird email. They shoot that off to Barry and they say, what's going on with this? Barry is intimately involved in some form or fashion with all of our staff because he's, he has kind of that broad-based knowledge that is so beneficial for a district our size. We
Yep.
we would not be here in the same place if it wasn't for Barry doing what he does.
No, I agree. I saw a minor issue on the website the other week, and like, hey Barry, here's this, boop, boop, fix it up, no issues. So yeah,
Right. Yeah, he's
I just felt bad because he was in the middle of everything else, but you know.
yeah, and
What-
I think what happens is we talked about this as a district. Barry and I actually had this conversation Thursday or Friday of last week. One of the issues, and our district is great when things are going great. We are able to get by. We're able to do well with the kids. The teachers are great. The issue is when things go off a little bit, when we don't have the staff we need to do the things that we typically don't do. That's when it becomes an issue. So that's where, we're all wearing multiple hats right now. And that's why it's a little more challenging, I think, for all of us. So, and when I say kudos to Barry, it's Barry and his whole team, but Barry is wearing like 20 hats.
Yeah.
Barry,
Right. It's the same thing where I think, it's not a deep IT department for the size of district we have.
No.
We need, every employee to kind of be their eyes and ears because they don't have the time to monitor and
Nope.
just make sure everything's running smooth because there's going to be the little issues they're always fixing. So
Right. You're right.
Barry is probably my daughter Jade's favorite people because he was the one who made the recommendation for the computer she has now. So he's high on her list. But you're actually touching on one other question that I'd like to ask, and that is there something I know you're short-staffed. I mean, we have fewer people now than we did a year ago, and we probably have 4 or 5 times the amount of work to do, maybe higher. Is there something from the committee? Is there something that can help get the schools ready? Is there something that apart from shaking the money tree, I mean, is there any additional steps that we could do to try to basically help with the remaining tasks that are in front of us before kids start coming back?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for us, for my staff, is if we have time to do what we need to do, then we're good to go.
Right.
I think one of the things that happens, and again, this is an extraneous topic, but when you have 22 people who have questions about things, and there's one superintendent, it's a lot of information that it has to channel through me and then to somebody else and then to get back to this person. So there are benefits and drawbacks of having such a large school committee in that sense. So
Yes.
it would be helpful if we just said, okay, we're doing this, we've got it, we're on board. Here, here's some information for you.
Right.
That would make our lives a little easier moving forward because again, we spend an awful lot of time kind of trying to dig up information, to share. So that has completely changed. It was not like this last year at this time.
This is something I was thinking about, and I will ask you if you think this has any merit. But I mean, it's the 14th. School starts in 2 days, and Adam and we've been talking about these things, and I mean I learned a lot, and thank you for all the breakdown you've given us. My general thought is something along the lines of we need to let the gears turn a little bit to figure out where we need the oil. Is that?
Yeah, completely. Because, again, you don't know what you don't know. So as we go through this, when I was meeting with the boards of health today, the good point of starting off remote right now is that we have a lot of schools that are going hybrid later this week, and they're going to go through the trials and tribulations associated with COVID cases and bringing in the emergency COVID teams to test a grade level or a whole school. They'll be dealing with contact tracing and so forth. So a lot of the issues that all schools are going to have to deal with, we at least have someone that's doing it, and we can talk with other school districts after and say, hey, how did you do this? How did that work? We have a really strong superintendent's network. And I think that's going to be beneficial for us as a district, because we're going to have 65% of the other districts starting school with kids in school. And that's going to help us. But like you said, we want some of the machinery to move first to see what we need to do to fix it.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that's just something I was thinking about today. Thank you.
All right. So unless there's something else, and if I can find where I put the agenda, here we go. All right. So I think that's all we have for, the requirements for reopening. I know at our last meeting, we mentioned the fields and outdoor facilities. Did you have a quick update? Because I know you were going to have a conversation.
Yeah, Selectman Levine and I did not have a chance to connect yet. So he's doing, he's busy these days. I'm busy these days. We're kind of going back and forth, but I'm hopeful to be able to speak with him about it pretty soon. I did, I know that there were some concerns around people using the fields and so forth, and it's in all honesty, it's more around people using the fields as a dog park. That's
right.
Yep. It doesn't work for me.
I get that. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna skip over the policy review. I don't think we have our next meeting is more geared towards that. Our next meeting is already set. Is there any new business that we want to bring up at the next meeting that anybody can think of? No? All right, I can't think of it at the moment either, so. Okay, so unless anybody has anything else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn and we can have a few minutes break.
So moved.
I'll second it. Jeff?
I will vote yes.
And so will I. All right.
Thank you, guys.
43, meeting's over.
Thank you.
See you in a little bit. Thank you.
All right.
Yep,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.